All right. So biohacking. Who's heard of this word before? You two don't count.
Only from what you've said.
Just a little bit. It's kind of new.
Yeah.
It's been a trendy thing the last few years. It's really started to become like a hashtag. I'd say probably the last 5-6 years, maybe a little longer. But it's pretty cool. It sounds kind of weird on the surface. You're like, what does this mean exactly? Biohacking, nerdy thing. I'll get into the definition in a bit, but it's really thinking about everything that you interact with. Everything in your environment that you come in contact with. The people that you surround yourself with, the foods that you eat, the air that you breathe, the light that you see, all of these things combine to essentially create your environment, which has a direct impact on how you look, feel, and perform. So what I want to start this with is that for this presentation, it's a lot of information. I'll try my best to keep it lean, to try to basically make it very practical, some good takeaway tips and whatnot. But you definitely need to put your thinking hat on for this. You gotta be focused, you gotta be prepared. There's plenty of room for questions. If you have a question during the presentation, please ask, because there may be some technical thing that you're not sure of. Totally cool with interruptions. There'll also be plenty of room on the back end if you have more formal questions for that. Really what I try to do is take the 7 to 8 key pillars of our health and our environment, and then probably take a handful of practical recommendations in each one. There's a ton of science here, so if you're not from a scientific or academic background, that's okay. I'll try to make as good sense of it as I can, but my ultimate goal in the long run is to essentially put links and sources to all the research studies, the articles, like everything that you can find on this stuff. I don't have it done yet because it's a lot of information, but eventually I will. I'll forward it to you guys afterwards so you can follow up, do your own research, and that way you don't have to try to remember everything tonight, is what I'm saying. You'll definitely have access to the presentation, the slides, and all that, so you can get the gist, and then in time it'll be a lot more comprehensive. All right, so first thing is just medical disclaimer. I'm not a doctor, so this is kind of a formality. Any advice here given is educational and not to be taken, without direct consultation from your own medical practitioner. So some more fine print, so you can't sue me. All right, so a couple definitions here. I touched on it first just because I like to lead in with the hashtag element. But essentially, biohacking is about gaining control of your own biology. Most of us have health issues or symptoms or frustrations or even curiosities, things that we never understood why it works this way. And oftentimes we're at the mercy or whims of a doctor or some professional, or maybe even our parents and stuff growing up who had control of our stuff. But now that you're an adult and you're a conscious being and you're a nomad and you have an open mind, you are essentially in the driver's seat. And there's a lot that you can do about so many different bodily systems. A lot of this is still growing and changing every single day with the science that's behind it, but it's really, really cool what we're capable of. And if you really want to dig into this, there's so much information and so much potential as far as improving your health and things that you can do that was just not accessible 10, 20, 30 years ago, before the internet, before we had forums and all these experimenters and different things, Amazon, where you could buy any supplement online. So it's regarding health, yes, it's very difficult to live healthily in the world today, but it's also, we have more options at our disposal as well. So again, part of the introduction here is everything I say, I'm extremely confident in. I've spent the last 8 or so years, this is my main hobby, just researching, listening, podcasts, reading books, going to presentations, all kinds of different stuff. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, but you can trust what I say with a lot of confidence, but I tell everyone to verify, trust but verify. So do your own homework, take everything with a grain of salt, essentially. Don't take this as, as canon for health. Take it as curiosities to kind of get things started. I'm very confident that if you dig deep into the research and find good information, you'll come to a lot of the same conclusions I have, but at the same time, I'm not some guru. I'm not, I'm just a guy who's curious and wants to do the best I can. Another thing is that we're all biased. So obviously I have some opinions about things that I eat and things that I do, as we all do. We're human. So take that also to know that this is a contentious topic. So, vegans, vegetarians, different kind of religious backgrounds, etc. Sometimes you start talking about these things, it can be very contentious, just like politics and whatnot. So just, be warned, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers, I'm just trying to share information. So again, science is a moving target, and all of this is evolving rapidly. So again, everything I'm presenting today, the labs, the different, millionaire biohackers and everybody who's testing all this stuff every day, next week, next month, next year, a lot of this stuff is going to continue to get better because we have more information and more iterations on practicing it. So just know that this is the best, I think the best that we know today, at least what I've been able to discover, but it's going to go very quickly. And like I said, this is a very deep rabbit hole, so you can get lost in each one of these slides. Could probably be its own presentation if I really wanted to take that route. So again, I tried to do the best I can to be concise. So how I started on this path was, I probably told this story before, but just to be thorough and for the video and whatnot, my grandpa had a heart attack in his mid-40s, a couple years before I was born in the early 80s. And basically I should not have known him because he got lucky and got a donor heart transplant, one of the first successful ever in the state of Kentucky. And he got like another 24 years or something off of that heart. So basically I should have never known my grandpa, and he ended up being a very influential person in my life. But seeing that, and then also knowing that his dad, so my great-grandpa, basically had the same fate, but he didn't get a donor heart, so he died in his mid-40s of heart disease. I saw this. I saw my dad growing up, gain a bunch of weight, started to get more unhealthy. We all have the same frame, all the males in my family, so I saw this potential for myself, and I did not want to be this way. I saw my older brother go to college. He quickly gained 30, 40, 50 pounds by the time he had graduated as a senior, and started smoking, was drinking, partying, doing a bunch of stuff that wasn't so good for his health. And I didn't want that potential for me. I saw that there was a different way. I saw that I could still have fun. I could still eat plenty of food. I just had to make the right choices. So early on, I started with doing my own things that I thought was healthy. Later on, I found biohacking, paleo, all this extra stuff, and realized I was not quite on the right track, but at least I was doing something, and that started me down a much deeper path. So biohacking is really all about systems thinking. So what this means is that there's a lot of variables. Think of like an engine in a car, essentially. If you change the amount of air intake that car is getting, it's going to affect a lot of other variables when it comes to the temperature, when it comes to the efficiency of the fuel economy, etc. Your body is the same way. When you start changing variables, you may have an effect over here that doesn't seem to be connected to your hormones or connected to your digestion, but all of these things are interconnected, almost like a spider's web. So the more you learn, you start to see the overlaying layers, and you start to realize there's a lot of buttons and a lot of levers that you can push and pull to essentially make changes on a big scale. So the core elements of biohacking, and I think of one of the most important things regarding all health, is mitochondria. So it's going to be a main topic in this presentation. If there's one thing that you should hold on to, is think more about your mitochondria, start getting curious, asking questions, and dig into the research on this, because everything comes back to this. This is the lowest common denominator. This is the bottom floor of the pyramid. Everything else eats and sleeps, breathes off of this component. So who has heard of mitochondria? Who's familiar with this? Again, I know, okay. The two presenters from before, okay. So essentially what these guys do, these are like the little battery packs, the little power plants in your cells. As a human, we have trillions of cells, human cells, like liver cells and blood cells and brain cells. Well, in each of every cell that we have, you have an average of 1,000 mitochondria inside the membrane of that cell. And then in your heart, your eyes, and your brain, you have over 10,000, and female ovaries. You have over 10,000 mitochondria in those cells. So technically, we are more mitochondria than we are human, if you look at it from a raw number standpoint. Everything you do in the body works off of this currency. So this looks like a complicated picture. You don't need to memorize everything. Basically, I just wanted to show you what they look like and how they operate. There's little membranes that allow nutrients, electrons, oxygen, toxins come through essentially the skin of the mitochondria. They get processed and energy comes out. The energy that they make is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Again, don't have to remember the name, but this is basically cash money in the body. Everything you do runs off ATP. Whether you're breathing, you're sleeping, you're digesting, you're creating hormones, you're fighting stress, your immune system, it all needs ATP to essentially do its job. So when the mitochondria don't work well, you don't work well. And the modern world is essentially an assault on your mitochondria. So you have to be very mindful and very careful of the decisions you make, because as you work on these, it's like the downstream process. Everything else beyond that gets better. You have more energy, you feel better, you're nicer because you have extra energy to work with. So these are the most important things, and I'll try to touch on how the different layers of my suggestions affect mitochondria as we go. So a lot of what I've talked about so far this week, and it comes up as a main topic in my conversations, is inflammation. Inflammation and blood sugar, or like I said, mainly the two biggest variables that you need to consider regarding your health. And if you control these, you're gonna go a long way. So inflammation, we hear about it all the time. You know, maybe you sprain an ankle or you break a bone or something. Of course, that's inflammation, and you're gonna feel it right away. It's gonna be obvious. What most people don't understand is that the low-level chronic inflammation that goes on throughout our body, and essentially you kind of get used to it, you get numb to it in many ways, and it's so just prevalent in the modern lifestyle that you just kind of forget about it, and that's the danger. So a lot of things that impact inflammation are exactly what I'm going to talk about, but these are some basic symptoms that you would see of low-level inflammation. So you might feel a little tired. You might have, you feel like your metabolism doesn't work as well as it used to. You can't lose weight. You got that stubborn 10 pounds you want to get rid of, and no matter what you do. Brain fog, you're searching for that word. You can't seem to, you forget where you were in your sentence. What were we talking about? These kind of simple symptoms. If I went down this list, basically we all have these symptoms most of the time. Just about every day we have a handful of these. This is a sign. This is your body telling you something. You should not be feeling these things, at least regularly. So if you do, this means you probably have the inflammation that you need to start working on, because if you don't, this is the first step towards chronic disease in the long run. So you feel it now as this, but in 10, 20, 30 years, it becomes cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all these things. This is basically the root of all disease. If you don't have inflammation, you're going to avoid most of the major diseases. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's or dementia take out 80% of all humans in the modern world. 80% of people die from those 4 diseases, and this is the basic root cause of it. There's different reasons why the inflammation happens, but this is the common denominator. So start thinking about inflammation on a serious level. So one of the main things you can do to impact your inflammation and your inflammatory levels is through your diet. So this is a little chopped off because the bottom, I'm sorry, you'll get the finished product. But essentially it's a do's and don't list of things that you should do. I'm not going to go through each one. You can follow up on this later, but I'll hit on a few. It's essentially a paleo template diet. You're going to want to get out the main inflammatory contributors, which are grains, gluten, dairy, legumes, processed foods, sugar, fried foods, things like that. Cut those out and stick to meat and vegetables. You can have a little bit of fruit. Make sure you put good fats on everything. Try to eat in season. It doesn't have to be so complicated. This food is flavorful, it's good, it's filling, it gives you energy, it doesn't weigh you down. People think it's extremely limiting, but I think you can be super creative with the different types of sauces and spices and things that you can do with this. I really enjoy it. I've been eating this way basically 99% since 7 years now, so it's done me a lot of good and changes in my own body and my blood work and many other aspects. Key points I want to hit on here are meat is really important, the quality of your meat. Obviously we know about organic and pesticides and stuff when it comes to produce, but even more so important when it comes to meat is trying to get grass-fed and pastured or wild meat. This is essentially animals eating their own natural diet. This is the human version of what we believe is our own natural diet before we invented agriculture. It's like a hunter-gatherer diet. So essentially if you're going to be eating animals, you want to be eating animals that have eaten their own diet, because if they don't eat the right diet, they get inflammation. When we eat them, we get inflammation. It works its way up the food chain. I'd already talked about eating starches last. That's not just at the end of your plate of the meal, but also late in the day. If you preferably have starches at dinner, your body is better able to manage the blood sugar. You're going to get less of a spike, which helps you in the long run. So again, feel free to ask if you have any questions around specifics either now or at the end. So I won't say much here because I know you can't read this. This is just an example of a resource I'm going to give. It's an awesome infographic. It's a roadmap basically showing all the main food groups, what you should eat, what you shouldn't. Green, basically eat as much as you want, no problem. Yellow, be careful because some people are sensitive to these foods. And red, basically avoid at all costs. It shows you meal timing. It shows you ratios of a plate. It shows you how to do intermittent fasting. For one page, this is an amazing resource. I'll put it in the show notes or the presentation notes at the end so you can follow up on this, but this is a great place to start. So one thing that we've touched on a lot is grains. It seems to be that's one food group that people for some reason are very attached to and very defendant of. I get it, grains are good, we like our bread, we like toasted stuff, yeah, I understand. But once you get this stuff out of your body, I promise you don't miss it, you don't crave it, it doesn't even become food anymore. At least that's been my experience, but maybe it takes a while before you get to that point. The main reason why grains are a problem are the first 3 bullet points, or essentially the first 4 bullet points on this list. So gluten is incredibly inflammatory. It's not the same gluten that was essentially around in previous generations, historical Europe and other places that had grains. And throughout the 1900s, scientists have essentially selectively bred the wheat crop to make it produce a higher yield. Not essentially GMO, what you're heard of, but in somewhat it's kind of like that. Essentially what happened is wheat, I think it started out as either 14 or 16 chromosomes, but the way they have essentially used the plant, they have made it grow up to 48 chromosomes, which has completely changed the DNA of the plant, and it has a completely different impact on the body. Wheat is not the only crop that has gluten. Many grains do. It essentially attacks the gut in a very difficult way, and I'll show you on the next slide. Same thing for lectins. Gluten is a lectin, but there are other ones also in grains. These are basically punch little holes in your gut and open up the door for inflammation throughout the body. So I'll show you more on the next slide. Phytate is another thing that I want to touch on. It essentially is an anti-nutrient. It's why I avoid grains and legumes. It essentially acts like a sponge. So when you eat foods high in phytate, it'll bind to the vitamins and minerals also on board with that meal. So you have a nice meal, but you have bread or you have chickpeas or whatever it may be. There are anti-nutrients in there that will bind to the calciums, the different vitamins, the potassiums, and pull them out of the body with the stool. So you don't even get them. So not only do they cause inflammation, but they also take away from some of the vitamins that you get from the healthy foods you eat. Again, grains are not necessary. Maybe at some point in human evolution it was. We had winter, we didn't have refrigeration, life was hard, we needed bread to survive the winter. Sure, we're not in that stage anymore. Grains are very, very harmful. There's a ton of research. Again, I'll back this all up with studies later, but it's something that you can definitely do without. Just eat potatoes, eat bananas, eat plantains, eat white rice if you like. That's the only safe grain that I know of. Just make some nice replacements, eat more vegetables. I promise you're going to feel a lot better. So this is how grains essentially and lectins hurt the body. This is an example of your gut lining. So imagine that above up here, this is essentially inside your gut as your food is getting digested. This is the lining itself of your intestine, and then you start to get into the bloodstream. So what happens here is we have essentially our microbiome, our probiotics and stuff. They are the ones who are breaking down the foods, assimilating nutrients, and also directing toxins and trying to do a good job of keeping things clean in here. So they have this, they're backed up by essentially this wall right here of your gut lining. And normally what you'll have is something called tight junctions. It's essentially, you have cells that bind together, almost like a zipper on your pants. They're zip tight. They don't allow things to and from, only the microbiome gets to make these decisions. What happens is when you eat grains and lectins, you get inflamed. This is this low-level inflammation I was talking about. Lectins start to punch hole in these guts, the zipper becomes unzipped. Other things that you don't want come through, such as other microorganisms like pathogens and things that might be in the food that didn't get cooked well enough, you would have been safe from it had this not happened, other toxins, and even undigested food particles, things that aren't ready to go through. What happens here is your immune system sets just on the other side of your gut, sets right on the other side. These are little abbreviations for specific cells that fire and act in your immune system to work on things. And essentially what happens is they're used to getting certain things across, but when all this extra junk comes through that they don't want, they start to get confused, and your immune system doesn't know what to fight, and it actually ends up starting to fight you. This is called autoimmune disease. This is very common. This is very prevalent. It's something that's growing epidemically. If you have psoriasis, if you have arthritis, alopecia, thyroid issues, I mean, these are just a few. There's so many where your immune system essentially starts fighting your own body. These are some of the things that you can see, some other side effects of this, and this is the main reason to avoid grains. Most other foods, if you're careful to avoid lectins in vegetables, and then also like if you're eating meat or you're eating fats, you don't have to worry about this, at least from a lectin standpoint. So this is called leaky gut. This is like the hashtag code word that you'll hear it. There's a lot of research going behind this, and it is a big problem in the world today. So you feel free to come back and dive a little deeper on this. All right, so that was food. Now we're moving into water. Water is incredibly important because we're mostly water. We're about 70% water based upon our weight. Most people just, drink water. They don't think much of it. Hey, at least I'm not drinking soda. That's true. But, you have a question? Yeah, I think it's the TV. It's not on my computer. All right, we'll just have to roll with it. Sorry, guys. Getting back to water. So there's a difference of quality in food, there's quality in water. Spring water is definitely the best. It's coming straight from the earth. A lot of it will be filtered by the rocks and stuff coming up. Obviously, you'll want to make sure that it is a clean spring. There could be contamination, but for the most part, spring water is the best. It's as nature intended. It's going to be balanced with a lot of its minerals and whatnot. And you'll want to get a low TDS, which is TDS stands for total dissolved solids. So basically, it's telling you how hard or soft the water is. We've all heard of hard water, soft water. Some people have to put certain like little softeners and crystals into their water to make it not mess up the pipes. The lower the better in general. As you can see on this pyramid, anything less than essentially 300 is deemed good. I've measured as low as 20 before, and that was in Bonsko on spring there. Most of the time, you'll get it around 100, 150. Most places. So you want soft water to drink. You want to get your minerals from plants, not from water, at least in this regard. Plastic is a big problem because a lot of people drink bottled water. In general, bottled water is cleaner because it has been filtered and processed in a way that has removed some of the junk, but it sets in the plastic. And plastic is very difficult on our hormones and our endocrine system. So it is something you really, really want to cut back. This is why you'll see me with the glass bottles all the time. I carry a water filter in my luggage. I keep it at home. You guys saw the Berkey from before. That is an incredible way to get great filtered water. It's metal, so there's no plastic involved. And then you can essentially take it on the go and you can use it anywhere. So if you're in Asia and you're not supposed to drink the tap water, it basically makes tap water safe for Westerners wherever we go. So that's the best hack I've found. I'll show some results for the filter for this. Technically, you can take river water and just put it in there. Like, it will make the filter lose its life faster. You'll have to replace the carbon faster because it's working harder. But technically, you can drink like non-potable water. You can make it potable with just one filter on this. I've never tried it. I don't want to try it, but apparently you can. So also fluoride. This is a big thing. It's nice because most of Europe does not fluoride their water, or fluoridate their water, which is what we want. This is kind of a bit of a conspiracy, but again, there's a ton of science behind this as well. Fluoride is essentially, it's a mineral. It comes from the earth. There's two forms. The sodium fluoride is what you'll find in rock. It's not as bad, just a little bit in spring water stuff, not something you need to worry about too much. It's the added, essentially the man-made fluoride that we need to be careful of. It is a byproduct of the aluminum smelting industry, and it's basically a way for them to get rid of it. I don't want to go into the controversy side of it, but most of Europe doesn't fluoridate their water. Most of the US does. I'm not sure about places in Asia. But generally, fluoride is really rough on your thyroid. It basically slows your metabolism. It calcifies the thyroid, and the thyroid is the master switch of your metabolism. It tells basically you to burn fat, store, and produce different hormones. So avoid fluoride as best you can. Most of the bottled water shouldn't have it added to it, but you want to check labels. The Berkey does filter out most of the fluoride, but not in the version I have because the travel version cannot fit the add-on filter for fluoride. So that is not an option for now. But if you're back home and you have a bigger version of the Berkey, they have little fluoride filters you can add to the bottom that work. Also, not just beyond drinking water, but cold plunging. I don't know if you guys have tried this. It's kind of a new phenomenon that's starting to get quite popular. It is incredibly healthy for you when you want to talk about burning fat, helping your immune system, getting rid of depression, blood flow, getting rid of soreness if you have working out injuries, things like this. Getting into cold is one of the best things you can do on a regular basis. You don't have to go long, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, doesn't have to be crazy. Something like the little pond out here is going to be definitely cold enough for that. It is extremely rejuvenating. It feels really good. You just have to get over the scare factor of starting it out because a lot of people are super scared of cold water. But I promise it's not that bad, and you do adjust. You get much better at it as you do it. It's something that you acclimate to. All right, so this is some results that I picked up today for the Berkey. I already knew this, but I wanted to get it into a text form so that you could see it. The Berkey is phenomenal. I mean, carbon itself is one of the best filtration elements we have. This is stuff that NASA uses in space stations and other places to essentially deal with water issues that they have limited, access to bigger equipment. It gets rid of viruses, bacteria, heavy metals, people that throw their drugs down the toilet that essentially get into the water supply, pesticides that come from agriculture and other things, a ton of stuff. You're going to get at least 95% and often up to 99% on most of these things. So it makes your water incredibly safe to drink. Generally speaking, the tap water in Europe is going to be better because they don't fluoridate, and I think they use just better practices when it comes to pipes and things. But a lot of the buildings in Europe are old, so the pipes could be a problem. And you never know because there's so many differences in country to country. It's always best to have essentially a buffer or a safety net. And I highly recommend the Berkey. You can get one for about $100 ready to go with the filter and everything. So it's not a cost prohibitive thing, but nomad problems with luggage. So just be mindful.
Is it good enough to just use put carbon into your water bottle or whatever? Is it just that you found that the Berkey is best because it's a good design?
Something smaller we can travel with.
So Berkey makes one that's Berkey Sport, I think is what it's called. And it's essentially just a plastic water bottle with a straw that has a carbon filter at the bottom of the straw. So when you suck water through, it comes through. That would be good if you're in airports or something because you don't want to have to be setting up your filter all the time. But it's also not going to be good for day-to-day use. Like if you want to cook or if you want to have a bunch of water on you. It's good in a pinch, but it's not really good in the long run. The travel Berkey, or I think it's called the Berkey Go or Go Berkey. That's the version I have. It's the smallest one they make that's actually that style. It's the best that I've found to be as good as it is and as small as it is and as cheap as it is. There may be better options, but I've tried many over the years, and this is the current version that I found the best. But hopefully more technology will come out and water filtration will continue to get better. But as far as a handheld thing, there's nothing that I can recommend with much confidence.
Can you not just put the thing inside?
What's that?
Put the thing that makes the water better
Can you
inside?
put carbon straight into water and it filter it?
Well, you would then be drinking the carbon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you would expel most of it, but there's a chance that it becomes, into you as well. And it's not going to be very tasty if you're drinking carbon all the time. And also, carbon is very adsorbent to basically anything it contacts with. So if you're drinking it and you're eating your food, it's going to absorb your food, and you don't want that. You want to absorb your nutrients. So this is why you take carbon whenever you have a bad meal, you have food poisoning, you're drunk, it's a hangover cure. People that go to the ER for an overdose, they pump their stomach full of carbon a lot of times. It goes in and gets whatever's there. So you don't want to be taking it with every meal with that. So I don't think that's a solution. So light. This one's really cool. It's also really inconvenient because light is everywhere, and the majority of the problem, obviously all of the problem, is the artificial light. So the lights in this room, the lights in your bedroom, the lights on your screen. This is probably one of the biggest health hazards that doesn't get enough attention because it is what we know as a Zeitgeber, which in German is called time giver. Light tells your body what time it is. It basically is one of the main signals in your environment that regulates a lot of the internal systems, especially your hormones. I can't say enough about how important light is, but that's the most difficult thing, is to try to manage this. So again, some recommendations that I have are essentially, you must respect the sun. We all need more sunlight. If you come from Middle East or Africa or somewhere, you need even more if you have darker skin. I would say at least 30 minutes unfiltered daily. This is no sunscreen. This is no glasses, sunglasses, no contacts. You want raw sunlight on your skin and in your eyes. This is the signal that is telling your body it's daytime. It's giving you energy. It signals hormones. It creates vitamin D. It does everything. Don't get sunburned. If 30 minutes a day will burn you right now, start slow. Start at 5 minutes. Start at 10 minutes and work your way up. You will build up a solar callus, just like you get calluses on your feet from walking barefoot. It just takes consistent exposure. So don't get sunburned. Sunburn is never good. But start to work your dose up to where you're getting a healthy dose of unfiltered sunlight. For women, it's a little harder because it's not as socially appropriate to have your shirt off, so you don't get as much skin exposure, which sucks. But that's why you see me with my shirt off a lot, is because I'm just trying to get as much sun as I can. I work indoors. I have to set under artificial lighting sometimes. It's not good for us. So basically, limit artificial light and maximize your natural light without getting burned. Just as there is junk food, as we know, potato chips, candy, there's junk light. All of the light you see in this room right now is essentially junk light. The problem with this is that Europe recently banned, in the last few years, incandescent light bulbs, which were deemed as less energy efficient. The problem is that the modern light bulbs that we use, which are mostly LEDs in here, there may be a few fluorescents as well, they are extremely biologically inefficient. So we are trading energy for our own health. And that's not really a good trade-off in the long run. The main factors here are the wavelength of the light. So again, you may not be able to see a good shot of this because the screen's kind of far away, but it has to do with the color spectrum. So even though you see these lights and they look like they're yellow or whatever, they're putting out a much higher degree of blue light than we want. You can see LED and fluorescent on this page. This is more of a natural light spectrum. This is what you want. So you want all of the spectrums in balance, and as you get later in the day, you want basically little to no blue or green and more red. The problem is these lights are sending basically a rainbow of colors, even though your eye doesn't perceive that. So it's telling your body that it's noon, and it's not noon. And when you start to have a mismatch between your circadian rhythm and all the systems in the body, this causes a lot of problems. This is why a lot of people can't lose weight. This is why a lot of people have depression. This is why a lot of people basically get cancer. I mean, this is another one just like that leaky gut example. It's a very front door aspect of a lot of diseases down the road. Light is very disrespected, but it's one thing you have to be super diligent about. So even if you were to control your light with some of these things like I do, like I have this little book light right here. I use this at night. It's just amber. It's all orange. It's all warm color. You can turn it on. It's rechargeable, built-in battery. I just carry it when I need to go to use the restroom or something at night because I don't want to turn the lights on. So I'll let you play with that real quick. That costs like $20. It's a super easy fix. It's really portable and lightweight. The other thing that I like to try to do is this little LED strip light. You can plug it in your wall and hang it over. You can turn it any color. The best color is red. You want it the redder the light, the better, especially at night. It does make your room look like a brothel, so just be careful if you have neighbors or somebody that comes by because they say, what's all this red light about? But it comes with a remote. Again, it's just a few grams. I don't feel like setting it up right now, but I can demonstrate if you would like. It's not just using these lights, but it's filtering or restricting the other lights. So if you know you're traveling and the light bulb's in the room, don't turn that light switch on. Go and find this light and grab that light instead. If there's little LEDs that come on your computer, I have little electric tape, black tape over it, little white lights. All of this light matters. If you have 1 second of blue light, white light, green light, you can reduce your melatonin production in your brain for up to 4 hours. 1 second. So it can't be enough just to use these lights. You literally have to like scan your room and shut it all down. Like figure out ways to unplug stuff, cover the curtains so you don't get the natural light coming through the windows, and hack your electronics to essentially create a light, safe environment. It does sound like a lot of work, but it's not that bad. Once you get the basics and some little equipment, you can do it pretty quick. And this is one of the most essentially beneficial things you can do. Even this is right up there with changing your diet. I'm not kidding. This is incredibly important.
Can you adjust, like, so you know how you can adjust on a Mac that it changes the screen the later in the day it goes?
Yeah.
Can you do that on your phone so it does the same thing?
Yes. So this is the Iris software you see right here. They have a phone app that's free. It's a little janky on the phone app. It's kind of buggy, but you have to learn how to do like a side loader jailbroken thing. It's not so hard, but there's an article on it. But they do make software for this, and they make Iris software for the computer too. The computer software is way better than the stock stuff that comes in Mac and Windows, and even Flux, what a lot of people are used to that one because it's a little older. Iris is like the Cadillac of the software. It costs $7, one-time fee. It's not a subscription model. So worth it. It has amazing features with timers, with color pausings, and all kinds of different stuff that you can do. I highly recommend that software. It's legit. So. The other thing you can do that is really important because you can't.
Change the color of the light, or what it do?
It makes it orange.
Yeah, you're removing the. That helps, but if you can see the color, you can still tell it's green. You can still tell it's blue. It's not good enough, at least for night. Like yeah, it helps during the day because you don't want too much blue light even during the day. We get too much blue light is what it is. We're blue light toxic, blue light overdosed. There's a lot of issues with this, essentially contributing to macular degeneration. This is something that's growing just like all the other diseases we mentioned. It's basically age-related blindness, but blue light is basically the culprit to blame. All the kids are growing up with iPads in their face and everything now. They're just getting dosed with blue light, and blue light will essentially degrade the cell membrane in your retina, so it's literally destroying your eye. You can have a little bit. When you go outside in the day, the sky is blue. That's because of blue light. But it's balanced with the other lights, and that is in a natural spectrum that our body's used to. The problem is this is not balanced. It's very toxic. The one thing you can do on the road as well is if you can't filter out the lights because you can't control where you go, is you can get these sweet-looking glasses. And these glasses essentially will filter the light for you. And I know it's funny, you laugh about it, but there are studies behind these glasses that showing like just these yellow ones. These are more for the daytime because you want some blue light, but not all. The red is for night, so you can even get upgraded into the sweet laser construction worker style. These essentially block 100% of the green and blue. So when you put these on, your brain thinks it's dark. Like that's how powerful these are. It's incredible. You put these on and in 30 minutes you're going to be yawning because you're so tired.
Yeah.
This is how you do it. Again, it's not socially acceptable. So, you go out to the bar, you go out to the club, you're not going to be getting laid if you're wearing these, just fair warning. But if you're at home and you're just with your partner and you teach them a little bit about biohacking so they don't think you're crazy, maybe they'll learn to respect you wearing these things around the house or maybe they'll track themselves when they'll get that. So I'm going to pass these around. But there are studies on these, especially the yellow ones. Blue light is so powerful it even change your brain waves. So as most people have probably heard, beta brain waves, alpha brain waves, etc. Beta is like that stressed kind of busy work thing. Basically, you just had a cup of coffee. That's what beta feels like. When you wear the yellow ones, especially during the daytime, you can get a reduction of up to 40% in a beta brainwave just from wearing the glasses, not even changing what else you did. That's incredibly powerful stuff when it comes to your performance. That brand of the yellow one is called True Darks. If you want to look them up, they're the best brand that I've found. Really good stuff. The red ones were like $8 on Amazon, like laser engineer glasses. So this is not expensive. All right, moving on. I'll try to speed this up a bit. Toxic burden. This is another one we need to think about. This is basically all the bad stuff that we encounter in our environment. So the biggest one that hit me hard, that's literally changed my life in some negative ways, is mold. We think of mold as just something that grows on bread or maybe blue cheese and things like that. That is some molds. But what I'm talking about is indoor mold that grows in water-damaged buildings. This is incredibly common. Some say as much as 50% of buildings have some degree of water damage, and I think it's on every 3 years, every structure has some water damage issue, whether it's a pipe busting in the wall, a flood, some roof tiles missing, things like this. Mold starts to form pretty quickly in about 24 to 48 hours after a water damaged event, and it's quite difficult to get rid of. But the reason why it matters is it is one of the most toxic and poisonous things we know in a man. It's terrible for your kidneys, and it's really, really bad for your mitochondria. I've lived in 2 moldy apartments in my adult life, and I was younger to a point where I didn't know how bad it was for me. And basically what it's done is it has really made my immune system pissed off towards mold. So if I go into a water damaged building, I'm the first to know. Most people don't even bat an eye, and I'm over here, it's hard for me to breathe. I'm getting brain fog, I can't think, I feel like I'm getting sick, like I start sweating, like my immune system just hates mold now. I'm doing some biohacking things that I've learned to try to reset that response and hopefully not have to live like this. But mold is one of the things that you need to avoid at all costs. If you go into a building, an Airbnb, somewhere that you're renting because we move a lot, it smells damp, it smells musty, get the fuck out of there ASAP. Do not mess around with this stuff. Hopefully you have different genetics than me and it doesn't impact you as significantly, but I mean, there's documentaries on this stuff that'll like scare you to death. Like it's crazy. Mold is the big one, and again, I say this a lot, it's one of the biggest problems that nobody's talking about. It's because it's everywhere. The buildings in Europe are very old, so they did build smarter when it comes to drafts and airflow to help reduce the likelihood of mold than some of the new like cookie cutter American buildings, but they also have been around for thousands of years, so you kind of get a trade-off there. Just be mindful of mold, do your homework. This is a big problem. Some of these others I won't expand on, like the biotoxins, heavy metals. Those are somewhat self-explanatory. You want to try to have clean water, clean food. Just be careful with what you get. Again, going back to plastics, this is big. Try to be very careful of the bottled water stuff. I know I touched on this earlier, but bottled water often sits on a pallet, on a dock, in a truck, in a parking lot that's heated up, sunshine. Anytime you get heat or sun or even acidic contents inside, so juices, especially tomato juice, things like this, there's a chemical reaction that happens with the plastic and it starts to liberate a lot of the chemicals into the food. So then when you drink the stuff, it's going to get in your body. This is very estrogenic stuff. I think I saw a study a while back that 96% of breast cancer tumor cells had elevated levels of essentially BPA and plastic residues. So this is not something to mess around with. You have control over this. I know plastics are everywhere. You can't avoid them all the time, but if you can cut them out every chance you can, it's going to go a long way. Once you start getting them out of your body and you get them out of your system, like you stop using things with them, your body can get that stuff out in about 2 to 3 weeks. The problem is that we constantly put it in there, so we never get that break from the plastics. Another hidden source is receipt paper. Anything that's thermally printed in receipt paper is a big exposure to BPA. It's the same stuff in the plastic water bottles. So be careful. Don't touch receipts if you don't have to. If they say, would you like a receipt, tell them no. If you need it for your business or accounting, take a picture of it on your phone. Try not to touch it. This is another simple exposure that most people don't think about. Again, just Google it. There's plenty of information. I'm not making this up. Air pollution, again, usually indoor air is much worse than outdoor air, believe it or not. And that's because of airflow and things that off-gas like paints and varnishes, carpets, etc. New things that we bring into the house. Try to get an air filter for your house. Use house plants. Open up the windows if you can. Preferably if you can find a place that's not next to a busy street, because all that car exhaust will just come right into your place. This is a big thing as well. Household chemicals. So this is stuff you use to clean your bathroom, clean your shower, clean your sink, spray cleaners. These things have really toxic stuff that are linked to birth defects and all kinds of issues. Again, it probably sounds like I'm being a hypochondriac with all the things I'm listing, but it's true. People just Google this stuff, I promise. You can cut corners on this. It's really simple. A universal household cleaner that's like pennies on the dollar is white vinegar and baking soda. You can make a nice little mixture. You can put some essential oils in there to aromatize it the way you want. It can clean almost anything. For heavy duty stuff, you can always find a good natural alternative. Just find ways to get the store-bought junk out of your life. Beauty products, that's another good one here. So I have some sunscreen and some bug block. These are organic, natural versions. You can find these online. You can find them at natural stores. It's usually about 20% more expensive, but so worth it. There's things that they put in regular sunscreen like benzenes and things that essentially change the way sun interacts with the skin, causes a different chemical reaction that is not good. Look for the natural products. Again, over the course of a lifetime, this is going to make a big difference on your body. Drink less. Drink less alcohol. I'm not going to tell you not to drink as she's pouring wine. I'm just saying drink less, because most of us drink too much. When you're putting all that alcohol into the body, your body has to fight the alcohol instead of fighting these other things that we already have to contend with. And then detox. Again, this is another huge hashtag trending thing. Most of it is bunk. Most of it is fake. These detox teas and stuff, this stuff doesn't work. What you need to do is really do the old school stuff. Get in a sauna, preferably infrared sauna. Sweating is one of the best ways to detox. The infrared sauna, those infrared wavelengths essentially penetrate the body, and they can liberate toxins from deep in the fat cells way below the surface of the skin. So you get much better action. Binders or chelation is essentially like taking things like charcoal while you do a sauna, because things get liberated and get put out into the sweat and into the blood. The binders can come up like a sponge and mop it and pull it out of the body while it's there. Also, if you have heavy metals, binders chelation is a good tactic. Fasting is another thing too, because most of the toxins that you keep in your body is smart. It's not going to let them hang out in the blood. It's not going to let them go to organs, because those are key parts of health. What it's going to do is shuttle them into your fat tissues to make them dormant. So as you start to lose weight, as you start to get healthier, as you start to sweat, the toxins will become liberated as they come out. So fasting is a great way to do this, because you burn fat when you fast, essentially. So that's going to bring more toxins out and help you detox as well. You just want to make sure you're following up with binders and things to keep that process moving.
How often would you recommend fasting?
It's different for men than women. For men, relatively frequently. I intermittent fast almost every day, and then usually once a week I'll do a 24-hour fast. And then every couple months I'll do maybe a 3-day fast or something longer possibly. For women, again, it's really different, because you have different hormones and your body is built to make a baby, so you need to have a caloric surplus most of the time, and they have issues with fasting. It's really hard for me to make any direct recommendation. I would just say do your homework, test it out. Usually short-term fast, you're going to be okay. It's not going to, nothing bad's going to happen in a once or twice thing, but it's something you have to build up to, just like the sun exposure. Most people are used to eating 3 squares meals a day with snacks and everything in between. So fasting can be a big transition for your metabolism, but it's something that's incredibly healthy, and religious practices have been doing it for thousands of years for many reasons. So it's something I think benefits everyone, but for women, just do your homework, test your body, maybe a weekly, monthly basis, something like that. Don't overdo it by any stretch. All right, so sleep. This is the next pillar of health we're moving to. So just like we have oral hygiene, we brush our teeth, we floss our teeth, we gargle, etc., we need to have sleep hygiene. And this is essentially creating an environment for sleep. And this happens hours before you lay down. I say hygiene in the sense because it makes sense metaphorically, not in the sense of like some cleanliness germ thing. It's just more or less a protocol. So you want to try to keep a consistent circadian rhythm, which means waking up and going to bed roughly the same time every day. When you're flip-flopping a couple hours each time, it's really hard on your body, because we run on 24-hour clocks, and that has a lot of issues with hormones, digestion, detox, etc. Again, we're nomads. We're going to change time zones. We're going to fly. So there are some hacks for that. But essentially, try to be as consistent as you can. We want to be social as well, so I get it. Wearing the glasses, doing the lights, taking the supplements, this all helps fight this. You want to filter the green and blue light for at least 2 hours before bed. This is hard to do if you're having a social night. Sometimes you just got to take the hit. I do it as well. But generally speaking, if I'm on my game and I'm in a rhythm, I have a base and I have my routine. When I'm at home and dinner's done and all this stuff, the lights are all red and yellow in my rooms. I have my screen filtered. I'm not, getting exposed to this. It's really, really important. So again, 1 second of blue light can change your melatonin production for up to 4 hours. So you have to take every little inch of this seriously. You want your room cool, dark, and quiet. These things create a nice deep sleep mode that essentially is going to allow your body to regenerate better. Be careful of caffeine. A lot of people don't metabolize caffeine very quickly. Anything in the afternoon, it can still be in your system by the time you go to bed, and that affects the level of sleep you're going to get. Sure, you might still be able to fall asleep, but you're not going to get as restorative sleep if you have too much caffeine earlier in the day. Don't be eating after dinner. Give your digestion a rest. So when you have dinner, if you want dessert, eat it immediately. Don't wait 2 hours and then come back for a midnight snack. You're essentially digesting and sleeping are essentially two different gears in the system, and you don't want to be doing both at the same time, preferably. So if you can have your last meal up to 4 hours before you go to bed, that's the best. If you can only do it 2 hours, that's better, but generally eating right before you go to bed is not a good idea.
What about a siesta?
What's that?
Siesta?
Yeah, siestas, there's different arguments on if naps are good or bad. I'm actually a fan of naps. I think the 20, 30-minute nap or whatever, if you need longer because you had bad sleep the night before, I think they can be really helpful. Generally speaking, if you're doing things right, you're living healthy, you're getting good sleep, you probably won't need a nap, but they're also something that you can bring back. If you're asking about eating before your nap, I think you're going to have a hard time not doing that, because generally you eat lunch and your nap has to be shortly after that just from scheduling. So I don't think that's as bad, because you're not going into full sleep mode. You're just getting a little break, so to speak. It's really about the overnight, dark, all the hormonal stuff that happens with eating. I really recommend supplementing magnesium. It's a mineral, but it's something that basically we're all deficient in. It's basically devoid in our soils because of over farming and what we do. We don't use compost, we don't rotate our crops, so we've essentially scorched the land of magnesium. And it's beyond vitamin D, it's probably the second most important nutrient that you can get. So most of us are deficient. You can get it really cheap. Always make sure you take a form that ends in ATE. So glycinate, citrate, malate. There's different forms. Those are the ones best absorbed by the body. There's other ones that don't end in ATE that you basically just expel them right out. So they're a waste of time. Something I've learned about recently is called your chronotype. So we all have a different circadian rhythm. So some of us are night owls, some of us are morning birds, etc. They have different words that they use in the book that was written on this, but we're all a little different, and when is our best time to be asleep and best time to be awake. There's an online quiz you can go, if you just Google chronotype quiz, I forget the name of it, but you can find it. It allows you to essentially to answer a short questionnaire, and you'll find out roughly when is your best time for performance. Because the problem is we're nomads, so this isn't our problem, but for most of the working world, they all work 9 to 5, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a 9-hour early bird, you're forced into that bucket, and that could be really difficult on your performance if that's not your schedule. But that's the way society works, and so we have a lot of, we'll say, unrealized potential in what we can do just because of the box we have to fit in. But with Nomads, you can work around your own schedule generally, so definitely find your chronotype. The last thing here is make sure you unplug your bedroom. Don't leave anything plugged into the wall sockets. Your TV, obviously if you need a fan, you gotta have a fan sometimes. But if you can unplug it, do it. Don't charge your phone in your room, charge your phone in the next room. Get it out, make it your sleep sanctuary. They're essentially, I'll touch on this a bit more, EMF stands for electromagnetic fields. So it's basically all the electrosmog that goes on in our environment. This is the Wi-Fi, this is your cell phone towers. Anything that's plugged in is essentially bringing an EMF from the wiring behind the wall and basically creating a small micro bubble of it out here. It's really hard for your body to contend with this stuff, especially on an ongoing basis. When you're asleep is when you really want to rest and be free of these things. We can't avoid them all day because we're nomads, we work, we live in the Western world. Cell phone towers are on every building, etc. But if you can give yourself a break at night, this is incredibly important, and I'll go a little bit deeper here soon. So exercise. This is one of my favorite things because it's one that you can feel immediately. It has a direct, instant gratification, so to speak. So I think the most important exercise type is resistance training. If you're only going to do one, and if you're super minimalist with your workout, you don't like it, it's not your thing, you're lazy, you're busy, just lift weights once a week, and that'll get you 80% of the way there, in my opinion. The favorite circuit that I like to use is called Body by Science. There's a book written on this by the same name, but you can Google this workout. It's really efficient. It's just 5 different lifts. You do it once a week, and essentially you're training to failure. It takes maybe 15 minutes, so it's not a big time investment, and you get the equipment to do it at basically any gym. You can use weights, you can use machines. There may be, I don't think there's a body weight version because it's a little more intense. It's like a high intensity weightlifting circuit. Really, really effective. It's the only weight training I've done for like the last year and a half, and I really like it. The HIIT training, high intensity interval, again, once or twice a week, gives your metabolism that kick. Karen and I did this yesterday. It's body weight. There's a ton of recommendations online. You can find videos. You can find like a blog with a step-by-step. Super simple. It's just a way to essentially jolt the body and get everything moving. You'll find it's really awesome for essentially getting the tension out of your body, but also making sure you get really great sleep that night as it really calms the nervous system. Hiking is awesome. If you can do that once a week, great. Nature has tons of benefits. It's another great way of exercise, very low impact. Playing sports, if that's your thing, be competitive, something like this, tennis, basketball, whatever it is. Yoga is a daily practice. It is exercise, but it isn't. It's kind of in that in-between. Like, it's great. It's good for mobility. It's definitely exercise, but at the same time, it's not super intense. So I think it's something you can do every day just for general wellness. But I think if you really want to be healthy and you want to maximize your potential, you got to do a little bit more intense work beyond the yoga practice. Mobility, this is some tools here that I use for mobility that I recommend that everybody get some. A little ball that you can essentially roll on to massage your back, your ribs, your hips, wherever you have tension. This helps a lot. This is a foam roller that we've got the camera on. As I make jokes because I tell Carolina this is my foam mistress as I make love to her every day on the ground, rolling on my butt, my legs, and my abs. I mean, it literally looks pretty ridiculous, some of the things you can do on this thing. This is the travel version. It's really small and light. So key. We set a lot. Our hips get tight. Our back gets tight. These little tools are things that you can essentially do to help work out the kinks and keep your body fluid and flexible. That's what we call voodoo floss. Here, I'll show it to you real quick. It essentially, you can use it as a resistance band to train with, but you can also essentially take it if you have adhesions or scar tissue on elbows, knees, ankles. You can essentially wrap it like compression around the joint. I can demonstrate this after the presentation. And essentially what it does is it restricts the blood flow to the area for a bit, and because of the compression, it's compressing all the tissues beneath it. So if you have like a little trigger point, scar tissue, whatever, when you move, when it's under compression, you can floss that stuff out, and essentially it'll increase mobility in any joint. This is really powerful stuff to be so cheap. People who have knee problems can get some great benefits from that. The blue thing helps reset your spine, essentially rolling on it. Your spine goes in the groove and essentially like straightens up your ribs. It's really awesome stuff. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Just move, get out, find something that works for you. Make sure you're doing some exercise on a regular basis, but really focus on recovery. Most people I know who exercise too much. They're doing CrossFit 3, 4, 5 times a week. Your body's not built for that. You're going to break down. Your nervous system is already stressed from all the work and stuff that we have, but also it's essentially like you're going to get hurt, or you're going to burn out. Just make sure you focus on recovery, get good sleep, eat good food, be chill, like find time for meditation, things like this to help your body do the mobility, etc. So another part of biohacking is not just in the physical side. We're starting to get into the software component. Everything we've talked about so far is mainly our hardware, right? Like our physical body and what makes us our being, our skeleton. But there's also the software component, was what's going on in between the ears, so to speak. So there are several things you can do here that essentially help to contribute to mental and emotional and spiritual health. Everybody's heard about the benefits of meditation. I don't need to go into it much. A daily practice is super, super beneficial. It's free. It's awesome. Journaling is another thing. Again, it's one thing I should do more. I have the intention. I have the journal. I do it sometimes. It's just you really got to get into a routine of it. But getting those thoughts out of your mind and onto paper gives you a chance to just stop having that monkey busy mind. There's something incredible about it. And when you can look back over time, you can really start to learn a lot about things going on. Gratitude is an awesome, awesome practice, and in my opinion, it's the best emotion. It's also free. You can do it anytime you want. You can do it right now. It's as simple as literally focusing in on your heart space. Some might call it your heart chakra, but really just digging into what makes you grateful and why you're just happy to be here and experiencing what you're doing. This can be the thought of a loved one, a pet that makes you happy, a place, a vision, whatever. If you're ever upset, if you're stressed, if you're sad, just try to remember and think back to this and take a few minutes to focus on your breath, calm down, and just think grateful, gratitude thoughts, whatever it is that makes you feel this. It's so key for the nervous system, for stress, for tension. I think it's literally priceless when it comes to just getting your body in the right state of mind. Forgiveness is another big thing. A lot of people carry a lot of grudges. It could be ex-lovers, it could be bosses, it could be your parents, anyone. This is something that we all need to work on. We're all human. Nobody's perfect. But if you have these kinds of things in there, really try to work on these things to get them out, whether it's your yoga practice, your meditation practice, your journaling. A lot of people waste a lot of their energy just thinking about this stuff in their subconscious. Even if they're not thinking about it directly, it's still in there, and it's taking up resources that's dragging you down. Always make time for downtime. So this could be walks in nature, just playing sports, playing with pets, whatever it is that you find that works for you. Most of us are downtime deficient, so try to make a conscious effort to include this in your day. One that's been incredibly helpful to me is psychedelics. I haven't done them in about 6 years now, but I had a stretch in my 20s where I did them a couple times a year for a few years, and it really helped open me up and essentially teach me more about myself than I ever thought that I had access to. It's really abstract. They're all different for different people. I can't say, oh, please go do psychedelics. Like, be careful. These are really powerful tools, but if you use them in the right place, the right setting, the right people, the right dosage, the right drugs, they can be incredibly powerful. Trauma is another one. It kind of goes into the forgiveness aspect that we carry a lot of our own, essentially, wounds, energetic and emotional wounds with us. This could be bad breakups. This could be disappointments from friends who let you down. This could be an accident. You could have gotten a car wreck and it was traumatic when you were a kid and you've just held this in your nervous system for so long. The two techniques that are really, really powerful are EMDR and EFT. You'll see them spelled out on the screen there. EMDR is essentially something you can usually pay $10, $20 a session. It's not so expensive. They have places in Europe all over the place. It's essentially a person holds a light or a finger and they can essentially make you follow your eyes in a rhythmic pattern as you talk about the experience and bring up some of these emotional memories. And essentially, I don't know how it works, but it can tap into your limbic system, into your amygdala, to essentially reprogram the way you feel about that memory. So if you're stuck in a pattern about this experience and it's always hurtful or painful whenever you get triggered, this is a way for you to reset that response to that memory. And I've seen some incredibly powerful results. It's really, really recommended in the business world when it comes to CEOs or biohackers and people that are on the high end of this stuff. They're using this with great results. So definitely check it out if you feel like you have some trauma in there. EFT is also known as tapping. It's a way you can tap on different energy points in the body around the eyebrows, the face, the collarbones. Again, it's a similar idea where you can work with a practitioner or have a guided reading or audio that you're listening to as you're calling up these thoughts and essentially reprogram your response to them. Heart rate variability is something I'll demonstrate after. It's a great way to test the nervous system to see how coherent you are. When you're under stress or you're traveling or even when you're exercising, you're going to affect your HRV. It's a quantifiable state, a measurement of your nervous system. And most of us have a low HRV because we're overstressed and we, if you get sick, your HRV drops. There's a lot of ways. It's basically you want your HRV high, and when your HRV is high, you can bring it more. You can work out harder, and then when you work out, your HRV is going to dip down for a few days while you recover, and then it'll come back to normal. Knowing where your HRV is basically tells your body how much can I bring it today, how much can I take on, how much am I able to handle stress, essentially. And it's something that you can train through cold water, through fasting, through different supplements, breathing techniques. This is something you can definitely hack, and it's a really cool measurable that professional athletes, Olympians, a lot of people are using HRV to essentially maximize their training efficiency. I did want to share one video here real quick, and this is on some of the power of psychedelics. It's only 3 minutes. This is for ketamine, which is a really cool psychedelic that I haven't tried yet. This can show you the power to work through certain things using psychedelics.
Hi, I'm Selena Pikert-Shear. I'm the executive producer for Bulletproof Media, so I travel around with this guy, Dave, a lot. Today, I am trying ketamine with Dr. Matt Cook, who you'll meet in a second. And the reason why is I have a absolutely crippling fear of IVs. I've tried meditation, I've tried Xanax, I've tried getting gas, I've tried everything.
You're going to get a shot in the arm, which doesn't bother you. It's just a shot.
No, it doesn't trigger anything. I can get a shot in, but an IV, I can't. I am tough enough to get a stupid IV. I travel with Dave quite often, and so he's doing, stem cells, he's doing all of these cool biohacks that it's like, I want this so bad. But there's no possible way to do it until I break this, until I hack this.
Selena's a total badass. Jumps out of helicopters.
I'm super badass. You should say that.
She really is. And this is not her saying, I think I'm afraid. This is her body does it, and it pisses her off. And it's right now something that she hasn't learned how to control yet, and her body does it to her. The idea of using something like ketamine is to break that cycle so that the body can see, oh, here's a needle and I'm safe. They have now tested ketamine, they've tested MDMA, and even the use of psychedelic mushrooms to help people get over traumas.
So what we're doing now is the actual IV.
The actual IV is going to be really easy. What I'm going to do is we're going to wipe it off 3 times with alcohol. And then for about 1 second, I'm going to put the IV in. You rest your hand
I'm still trying to fight. Okay, so the ketamine came and it went, but I'm still calm.
but you're still totally calm.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Whoa, I'm doing it. Look at that. You're doing it. Like, no.
Your heart rate was perfect.
Is it normal?
Your heart rate is perfect.
Is it normal?
Yeah. Give me 5.
That's crazy. I don't feel high at all
Yeah.
anymore. Like, I feel totally normal. And that's that. And I'm awake.
Because that's just the ketamine allowed you to reset yourself.
That's insane. I feel 0 residual ketamine. And I'm putting an IV into my, that's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts. I don't feel like I have, and I can feel it go cold into my veins.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
I wouldn't even be able to say the right things. But it works. Like,
Okay. So,
It's pretty cool. There's a lot of power in these applications, but there's also a lot of risk for negative effects. You could have, bad trips and things like this. You could really cause more problems with your, your psychology, your nervous system if you're not careful with what you're doing. So if you ever go into any psychedelics or anything, make sure you know what you're doing and be careful. They're not playground toys. They're definitely legit applications. All right, so this is a new slide I added to this. I wanted to talk about sexual health because I think it's an incredible part of biohacking, and it's pretty cool that it's another thing to explore, and it all matters, right? Like our relationships, the food we eat, our environment, but also our romantic partners and our sex life. So there is a biohacking aspect to sex, believe it or not. A lot of it comes down to the type of orgasms and the frequency that you're having. So there are differences between men and women. And so the science that backs this up is that women should be having orgasms essentially as frequently as possible. Like every day, if not multiple days if you can. I know people are like, duh, but I'm saying like it's true. There's some pretty awesome science out there that shows the emotional intelligence is essentially directly linked to female emotional intelligence is directly linked to their orgasm frequency. So women in here might say, yeah, of course. Like when I'm not having orgasms, I'm a little flustered. I'm crazy. Like a busy brain. All this stuff. It helps you calm down. It helps you process emotions. It helps you just essentially be able to be your more authentic self in the world and not be caught up in all the extra stuff that your body is building up. Essentially, it's a bit different for men. Men essentially have something in the Taoist philosophy called Jing, which is basically the way they believe it's essentially your vitality or sexual energy. And in this school of thought, you are born with a set amount. And every time you have an orgasm, you lose a little bit, like 0.01% or something. And so if you're orgasming too much, you can deplete it rapidly. If you're not orgasming enough, it can grow stagnant. It's a very Chinese Eastern philosophy aspect. And essentially the biohacking formula that has been come up with this is essentially you take your age, you subtract 7, and then, sorry, I didn't put that, but you divide by 4. So that's essentially the days in between ejaculations that you should have. If you're doing it too much more than that, you can essentially deplete your Jing. Again, we have feasts and famines of this. Sometimes we have a lot more, sometimes we don't have it for a while. It all depends. And I think everyone's different, obviously. Some people, if you're younger, if you're in better health, you can have it more. Some people that if you've been sick or had health issues, maybe you would have it less. Your body uses resources all the same. Nothing goes to waste. But if you're putting a lot of resources into sexual energy, that's going to be less that goes into other things. So again, for men that are dating women or guys that are in relationships, you can still help your woman get orgasms without having to get one yourself. I know that seems crazy, but if this formula seems to be level, it really does make sense, and you have to learn to work this out. Now, going into the specific orgasm types, men are pretty simple. We basically have one type of orgasm, which is ejaculation, but women can have at least three that we know of and have pretty well documented on. The clitoral orgasm is something that most of us are familiar with. Clitoral stimulation, this is probably the most frequent orgasm that most women have had. The other two is where it starts to get real fun. It gets a little different. So the G-spot is essentially, when you enter the vagina, it's essentially the spongy, fleshy material that's right above the entrance to the vagina. And so essentially women can orgasm pretty powerfully just from stimulation on the spot. And it's pretty magical, especially for women who haven't ever had this experience before. Some women like it a lot, some don't like it at all. Everyone's very different. This is something that I think everyone should experience or explore a little bit because it has the potential to be much more intense than your clitoral orgasm. And then the last one is one that I recently discovered just a few years ago, and I've had a lot of fun with, which is the C-spot, which is essentially at the edge of the cervix. So if you're familiar with the vaginal anatomy, it's going to be much deeper. It's much deeper in there. There's almost like a little knob-like texture that goes really deep into it. Most women, can't get there on their own if they're pleasing themselves, and a lot of guys don't know about this or don't know how to get there. I certainly didn't for most of my adult life. So Stefan's the only other guy in this room, so I'm just saying this is one that I don't know if you're dating anyone or not, but if you learn this, your partner will thank you forever because it's really, really cool. So it's the one that I think everyone should definitely explore because there's a lot of theories out there that a lot of the tension we keep in our body, obviously orgasm can be a very explosive release of this tension in many ways. And especially for women, a lot of the tension and different trauma and things that are in subconscious, if you look at it from a spiritual, metaphysical standpoint, a lot of people believe it gets set down here, almost in this root chakra, cervix type space. You can give a woman some of the most powerful orgasms she's probably ever had by accessing the C-spot. So I highly recommend playing with that one. There's another really cool way essentially to have a better sexual health without specifically around climaxing and orgasm. And that comes down to a new technique called orgasmic meditation. If you've never heard of it, just Google it, YouTube it. There's some great videos. Essentially, it's where a partner or a couple, a man and a woman, I guess it could be two women as well. One is the receiver. Obviously, the woman, this is only for the woman. The man is always the giver. Essentially, you can cuddle in a way. Your legs are somewhat entwined. The woman lays on her back, and it's about 15 minutes, give or take, really, of you just gently and slowly stroking her clit, a very specific place on her clit. It's not about orgasm or climaxing, so the name is a little tricky, but it's really just about bonding and getting into this sexual energy, powerful release of essentially meditation. So the girl essentially lays there and enjoys the experience for what it is, but focuses on a Zen-like breathing, meditative state. And it's really, really powerful when it comes to building that connection with a partner and just having a little break in the day to alleviate stress. I've done this several times with partners, and it's always been really rewarding. And the last one is cuddle. Just get more cuddle time, because even if you're not, having sex and whatnot, we all need that bonding, that touch. So these are just a few little simple tricks you can do to up your sex game. All right, so I won't go too much on these. These are biomarkers. This is essentially things you want to measure in the blood. So how do we know all this stuff's working, right? We do the diet, we do the exercise. What does it matter? Okay, yeah, maybe I feel better, that's something. But this is how you take it out of the subjective, like placebo effect, and we go into actually what is happening in the blood. These are just 8 or so markers here. It's not a comprehensive list, but these are the ones I think that are the most beneficial to start with for sure. You're going to be checking vitamin D level, your inflammation with the CRP, your blood sugar, both short and long term. You can look at things happening throughout the blood and the metabolic panel, and with your thyroid, obviously, you can get microbiome sequencing to see what's going on within the gut, different pathogens you might have, and an overall hormonal profile from thyroid to your sex hormones as well. Again, most good doctors, if you find a good integrative or functional medicine doctor, this is where they're going to start as well. But this is the baseline, so you can see where you're at. When you can identify problems in these variables, this is how you get ahead of disease. So you can make the changes and make the tweaks to your lifestyle to prevent the diabetes, to prevent the cancer from happening, hopefully years down the road. Supplements are awesome. I'm a big fan. I can notice a big difference when I take them versus when I don't. As you travel, you generally need more supplements because traveling is difficult, it's stressful, flying is not good for us. But that's the problem for a nomad, right? Because you've got to source the supplements, get them delivered somewhere, you've got to pack them, you've got to remember to take them. It's a game, but it's one that I think if you're going to be healthy and thriving in the modern world, you need to be taking supplements. I'm a huge fan of food first. Food is where it starts, but I don't think you can be healthy with food alone, like optimally healthy with food alone in the modern world. Some people say just get all your nutrients from food, and I say that's great, but do you get all your toxins from food too? No. We have car exhaust, we have artificial light, we have pesticides that are sprayed in the air, there's mold in buildings. I mean, there's just so much stuff you have to battle. These are different types of supplements that you can take. This is not an exhaustive list, there's tons more, but these are kind of the baseline stuff that I think work for most people and help in different ways that we all need help. Again, I can't make any individual recommendations because we're all different, but if you have questions, I know a lot about different supplements. I'm happy to help and make some recommendations on the side. All right, wrapping up here almost. Electromagnetic fields, I talked about this a bit earlier. This is a big deal. It's something I think that we're going to look back on in 5-10 years along with the artificial light and be like, what the fuck were we thinking? Like, it's just like smoking wasn't bad for us until it was. And then obviously we had a big change with that in public policy. This is annoying because just like blue light, you can't really avoid it, not completely, especially if you travel. So you have to do the best that you can. This is an example of how it works in the body. Again, sorry for the lines, I don't know what that is. Essentially EMFs, they have different frequencies that are completely foreign to nature. All the EMFs we used to get were sun and making direct contact with Earth before we invented technology. And that is what our bodies have adapted to from a cellular biology standpoint. EMFs come in at probably most Wi-Fi is 2.4 million gigahertz, and now they're starting to come out with 5G, which is 5 million gigahertz. The Earth itself is 7 hertz. So we're talking about exponential differences. I mean, this is an alien waveform. Essentially, the way it happens is your cells basically work with a very balanced charge. This is set up through calcium. This is what we call voltage-gated calcium channels. When the EMF starts to interact with your cells because of the cell phone tower or the cell phone in your pocket or the Wi-Fi router next to your bed, they essentially start to cause havoc within the cell. They create a lot of free radicals which cause damage. These essentially are like oxidized particles that go through the body and steal electrons and other antioxidants and things that you need. They create cellular damage is basically the most simple way to put it. Again, you can't get rid of everything. You don't need to be walking around in a bubble and freaking out. But what you need to do is if you're not using your phone, put it on airplane mode. If it's in your pocket and touching your body, definitely keep it on airplane mode. You don't need your phone on with all the dings and notifications anyway. Maybe once an hour, you can pop it off airplane mode and check to see if you need to respond to something and then put it right back on. As a nomad who probably doesn't live on their phone all the time with like business calls, you can schedule your stuff. Just work around that schedule the best you can. If you do need to use your phone, try to use speakerphone. Keep it away from your body. Don't touch it if you can. This is all about proximity. The closer it is to you, the more contact you make with it, the worse it is. Just getting a few inches away is exponentially better than being right up next to it. This stuff is literally printed in the fine print for warning labels for iPhones and stuff. It's just nobody ever reads it. It says don't put it next to your body, all this stuff. There's a lot of science coming out behind this. If you can't use speakerphone because you're in a public place, it may not be appropriate. Try to use a headset or something that's going to separate your body as far as you can from the phone itself. Preferably, you wouldn't use Wi-Fi at all. Everything would be Ethernet cable, and you would have this phone off until you absolutely needed it. It's not easy to do this as you travel because you have to pack the stuff and you may not always have access to the router in the apartment or whatever. But ideally, if you ever have a base or things start to slow down, or if you can, pack a cable in your suitcase and you do get the router, turn the Wi-Fi off and just route it straight to your laptop. That cuts out like 90% of the problem when it comes to Wi-Fi and EMFs. Make sure that if you ever are turning off your phone or turning off your computer or turning off the Wi-Fi, you turn off the receiving aspect too. So you can turn off the Wi-Fi router, but if you don't turn off the signal on your computer to find it, you're still getting half of the problem. So make sure you do it at both ends. This is really important at night when you go to sleep because, again, your body needs to regenerate. It doesn't want these fields that it has to deal with. It wants to be fresh and clean so it can focus on other things. So definitely unplug as much as you can at night. Every little wall outlet, charge stuff in the other room. Grounding is big, so getting outside barefoot is a big deal. Getting into water is also very, very grounding, so a pool of water, a lake, a creek, whatever it may be. This helps your body discharge these things. When you make contact with the earth, it has an electromagnetic frequency that we're much more evolved to handle, and this helps you discharge a lot of this stuff. This is incredibly important if you've been flying because we pick up a lot of frequencies way up in the air, like stuff from our atmosphere. So as soon as you get out of flight, if you can go barefoot, do some yoga at the park, this is a great way to help get over jet lag. These sandals are essentially grounding sandals. There's a little copper plug right up there at the top. I don't know if it's good marketing, if it works or not. But they're basically the same price as the regular sandals like these, and they're super comfortable. So apparently when I'm wearing these, even when I'm wearing shoes, I'm still grounding, which is the problem because most of the time we wear rubber-soled shoes. Don't wear metals. If you can get rid of metal jewelry, that's a big thing. You're essentially creating an antenna-like effect by attracting these fields on you with jewelry. These are the 3 top researchers and influencers in the space right now that I know of. There's books, there's podcasts, there's websites, blogs, there's presentations on YouTube. Check that out. If you're curious and you're skeptical, you think this is bullshit, go to this website right here. There's like 10,000 studies on there that show all about these effects and what's going on in the research behind EMFs. All right, gadgets, we talked a little bit about them. I'll demonstrate some of these afterwards. I won't go into it too much here. So only a few slides left, I promise, guys. So mindset, this is incredibly important because you have to think about like, why are you doing this stuff? What is your motivation to biohack, to try to be healthy, to try to better yourself, to try to improve, whatever it is you're doing, your mood, your hormones, your relationships, etc. This is where the bread is buttered, as they say. This is where if you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter what you're doing because you're probably not going to stay with it. You're going to get off track. You're going to have cheat days. You're going to do these things. We're all human. I'm not saying that's so bad. I'm just saying in general, if you don't have the right mindset, it's hard to be grounded in being consistent and building to your best life. So a lot of habit formation is essentially like damming a river. So you've had these habits in your life. You eat this kind of food, you do this kind of routine for sleep, or you do it this way, whatever. It's literally pathways that are built into synapses in your brain. And essentially, that's the easiest pathway for your brain to take because it's done it so many times. It's carved out that valley just like a river does through a mountain. What you need to do as far as making new habits is you've got to build a dam. You've got to shift that river over to a new spot and start being consistent with willpower and your own basic structure, what you set up in life, until that new river is created. And then you've all of a sudden shifted gears and it becomes the new normal. Positive psychology is incredibly powerful. So speaking positively to yourself, affirmations, I am strong, I am beautiful, I am confident, I can do this. These things really help. It might be woo, it might be placebo. It certainly doesn't hurt. And I think we can all say being around positive people generally feels good. Along the flip side of this is just get rid of complaining. If you find yourself complaining, be mindful of it. Don't be around people that are complaining. Try to support them the best you can, but if they truly become toxic like this, you might want to question how much time or influence you're having with these people because that is toxic to your own mindset. So motivation and accountability, this all comes together. Essentially, what are you doing within your support system? Do you have people that hold you accountable to do these things and to make these positive changes? Do you have good people in your life that are giving you good information, good ideas, pushing you to be your best? It's not always easy to find this, right? I mean, yes, we get to pick our friends, but sometimes we all love our friends and family for who they are. I'm not trying to say we have to force these things, but I'm saying it is good if you can surround yourself with people that are helping you in these directions. All right, so here's some cool nomad tips. We've got hangovers and jet lag, which are something that we all deal with. A lot of this comes down to supplementation. So when you're dealing with a lot of booze, as we do, alcohol itself is oxidative, which means it creates oxidation in the body. So what you can do to balance that is through antioxidants, which we've all heard of. Vitamin C is very common. It's cheap. It's very easy to get. It's basically, you can't overdose on it. So you just pee out any extra that you don't need. If you're going to be drinking, especially heavily, I'd say take 2 to 3 capsules a night. Most capsules come in 500 milligrams. This just gives your body a baseline to help undo some of the damage that alcohol does. NAC and glutathione are also 2 stronger antioxidants that you can get. Maybe up to 2 per night. You don't need too much. You don't want to overdo it with those. But those are also great ways to help your body process it. Take those as you drink throughout the night, maybe 1 in between each glass of wine or whatever, however you want to space it out. But then you want to separate that, so a few hours later when you're done drinking, before you go to bed, pop a couple capsules of the activated charcoal. It kind of comes in like a broom, helps your body sweep out a lot of the toxins that would give you a hangover the next morning. And then stay hydrated. Essentially try to drink water between every glass, or at least periodically. Keep the fluids up, keep your body flushing that stuff out. If you do this pretty consistently, you'll notice a big difference in how you feel days after drinking. Now, jet lag is essentially, we're changing time zones. It's really hard on the body. You want to get that circadian rhythm balanced, and you want to get anchored back into the new place you'll be. So grounding, I already touched on. Go outside barefoot, do some yoga, go for a walk. This helps your body discharge what you pick up in the air from the airplane, but also helps you ground yourself to the local magnetism. Plunging in water is also good. The other aspects you can do with this are back to the German word, the Zeitgebers, the time givers. Go outside wherever you are. If you get there in the morning, or if you get there at night, the next morning, wake up and get yourself exposed to unfiltered light in the morning, on your skin, on your eyes. This is telling your body, hey, this is the new 8 a.m. or whatever. So it's going to start reprogramming the hormone cycles to get your body used to that time zone. Exercise is another good one. If your brain thinks it's 4 in the morning, but it's really 10 in the morning, going out and exercising will push your body closer to that new time zone because it's realizing it has to get adjusted to this. So exercise is a great way. And then food. If you can fast on your flight, this is the best way, because you're basically going to wait and to have your meal at the most appropriate time when you get in your new time zone. This way you're setting your digestion and all the circadian rhythm to the new time zone. So again, mask light, exercise, and food to whatever you want it to be upon arrival at the new time zone. Fasting, and then molecular hydrogen. This is another great antioxidant that is, it's quite cheap. You can just drop a tablet in the water. Really, really cool stuff. Helps undo a lot of the damage that you pick up from being on a flight. All right, so these are the cutting edge. This is basically what all the rich biohackers, the celebrities, this is what people are doing now for anti-aging. This is not an exhaustive list. This is probably just the top 5 or 10 that I know the most about and seem to generate the most attention. This is a rich man's game. Most of this stuff is beyond us. Some of these are a few $100, maybe some supplements and stuff. Some of these stem cells can be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 per an application. I think in the future, as this gets more popular, the cost will come down. It's just like cell phones. When they first came out, they were $10,000, but now you can get an iPhone for like $99 with a contract. So again, this is something to keep an eye on. This is really, really cool stuff. This is how you turn off aging in the body. This is why I think humans will eventually be able to live to 150, 200, maybe beyond years old, is because when you start doing this at an early age and you do this consistently along with the other things we talked about, you're basically turning off aging. So the closing thoughts here is all of this synergizes. Every single one helps the other one do better. When you start eating better, you have more energy to exercise. And when you exercise better, that means you're going to be more tired and you're going to get better sleep, which means you're going to wake up more refreshed, which means you're going to go into the day with more momentum, and on and on and on. So every one of these is powerful, but when you do them together, the sum is greater than the whole of the parts, as they say. Also, I like to say is it's easy to think about this stuff and get a little paranoid, right? It's easy to think about all the things we have to do and all these little steps. It's convoluted, right? It is, but it's also really important. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, oh, just skip that, you'll be fine. No, do as much as you can. It really, really matters. But at the same time, relax. Live your life and enjoy it. Try to be as peaceful as you can, but also not get overwhelmed. I mean, I'm very consistent. Most people around me can know this and they tell. But at the same time, I don't carry much stress about this stuff. I just do the best I can. And if sometimes there's something in my food, then fuck it, I have to deal with it. But I try to be what I can. So don't be paranoid, don't live in fear, but make wise decisions. And ultimately, we are all only responsible for our own well-being. There are very few other people that you'll meet that'll probably tell you about this stuff. Your doctor's not really going to tell you about this stuff unless you have a really awesome doctor. Most of the time, the system is set up to keep us stupid, keep us sick, keep us slow, keep us essentially in the rat race, in the matrix that most people go through, which is work in a desk job, you get this disease, take this pill, then you get this condition, and then you retire, and then you hopefully live to be 70 or 80. I think that's a bullshit way to live. I think there's so much more out there. This is just a taste of what it is. Maybe 5-10% of everything I said is what really is out there. So there's a lot here. Just do what you can and take charge of your own life. And so my challenge to you guys is essentially there was a lot of information here. Each pillar was its own, can of worms. But try to take one variable, one thing, whether it's your sleep, whether it's your exercise, whether it's something in your diet, whatever it may be. Challenge you to optimize one category right now. Like really go hard on this, research it, make some changes, make some purchases, whatever it needs to be. See what kind of results you get. Give it 30 days, give it 90 days. Really be consistent with it. And as you get benefits from that category, then you can branch out into the others. Rome was not built in a day. You couldn't do all this in one night. It's taken me 8 years of very dedicated work to create systems in place for myself. But if you start somewhere, you can always build to the next thing, and there's so much potential here. These are some resources you can use. These are blogs, podcasts, big-time influencers. Some of this stuff is super advanced to read. It's going to sound like science jargon, whatever. But as you continue to expose yourself to this information, you're going to learn the vocabulary, you're going to learn the terms, you're going to learn how this all fits together. Some of these people are spending, Ray Kurzweil's spending like $150,000 a month on biohacking. Like he's super rich millionaire, but he's like the guy driving this forward because all of his experiments they're trickling down into the masses, and it's making things cheaper because of his discoveries. Pretty cool stuff. All right, so the references for all this will come soon. I promise. I haven't been able to get to it, but I'll put links to every little bullet point, every little resource, every article, every gadget, every affiliate, everything I can get. It'll eventually be a master list. It'll be really helpful. All right, so now we're done. Sorry that was long-winded. Tried to get there as fast as I could without speaking a million miles a minute. So, if you have any questions about anything, any curiosities, something I didn't cover, something I did, something that you find contradictory, I'm all ears. I'm not dogmatic. I like banter in a way, healthy banter, criticism, feedback. So is there anything anybody wants to know about what we said, or just anything at all that you find curious in this space?
How would you prioritize this whole thing? You said just take one button now and again. There are a lot of stuff. So what would be like number 1, 2, 3?
I'd probably say diet is the most important variable. It's probably like 60% of everything for the most part. I mean, it all depends really on where you're at. Like, what's your health? What's your problem? Like, do you have inflammation? Is your blood sugar high? Does this run in your family? Do you have problems sleeping? Like, so it's really hard to say specifically, but I would say diet is probably the most important. Sleep is the second most important. I think if you get those two really dialed in, you're going to be way ahead of the game. You're really going to move the needle forward. I would say that would be the biggest thing. And then as far as, I mean, it's really hard. It's splitting hairs. I mean, EMFs are important. Light isn't really important because it affects your sleep. So they all kind of can join together. But I'd say diet and sleep are probably the top two things. And I think that makes the most sense to people too, right? Like we can all agree upon, okay, I can feel this right away. So I would say start there.
Which type of cuisine that is closest to this biohacking diet? Which type of cuisine? So that at least we have an idea.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if there is one. That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I know what things I should avoid and what are good for me. So when I go into a menu, I can just attack it. I can quickly rule things out, modify the menu, order this, not that. A la carte some side dishes. Get a salad without cheese, whatever. I mean, probably the European cuisine, just because it's more meat and vegetables. I mean, that's probably the easiest way. Asian cuisine isn't bad either, but you got to be careful with a lot of the sauces and the oils and the things they use. That's just, they use peanuts a lot, they use soy a lot, they use gluten a lot, and those are things you don't want at all in your diet if you can avoid them completely. But, there's not to say there isn't good foods. I mean, a lot of the curries, the coconut milk-based curries with lots of herbs and spices and rice and things like that, this is all totally fine, So you just have to really know food groups to avoid and ingredients to avoid, and then do your best to navigate it. It gets a lot easier with time if you're consistent. and I think the resources can help. But there's not an exact cuisine. I mean, this is all, you know, modern what we're doing. You know, we're taking an ancestral approach to food. You know, we're looking at what we were evolved to digest, but yet we're overlaying it on modern menus, which is not necessarily aligned. Maybe you get lucky and you find a paleo restaurant like we did in Krakow, but in general, you just got to do your best. All right. Good. Thank you.